So I think first period might've been a little after 9. First plane hit at 8:46, I believe. He rolls into first class. He goes, "Yo, Dave, doesn't your dad work in the World Trade Center?" And I said, "Yes, why?" And he goes, "A plane flew into the building." And back to what you're saying, surreal. It was like, I don't know what the hell that meant. What do you mean a plane flew into the building? And I don't remember what he told me. I don't know if he gave me more details, but I believe I went straight to the office. I excused myself, went to the office to try to make a phone call to call my mom and yada, yada. And they wouldn't let me.
It is actually always cool to talk with someone who is in my industry, but does something entirely different. So you have the podcast Dead Talks, where you go through the nature, science, realities, and pretty much anything involving grief and death and the afterlife, and it's from your own personal story. So for people who have not seen your podcast before on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast, we'll have that linked down below. But I think obviously your backstory is the driving force to what you do. So would you mind just explaining, what happened with your dad?
Yeah. So my dad was in the World Trade Center. I was 12 at the time. He was in Tower 1. And I don't think it's a spoiler alert, but I think everyone knows what happened on September 11th. And he was on the 105th floor. So honestly, now looking back, even at the time, he had no shot of getting out, even though there were, I think there was a handful of people a couple that I had on my podcast that got out above the impact of the plane. But yeah, he never made it home that day. So with the podcast, it obviously started from that day. That's my big why. My dad's death, essentially. It's something that a lot of people didn't talk about. And with my story, I was very internalized. And I think I've gotten out of that over the years. But talking about death, the most common thing we're all going to go through, I just thought was important, and doing it in a way that is just, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. And it's just a conversation. And I think it's something that should be normalized. But yeah, essentially it starts on September 11th.
Did your dad work at Canner?
Yeah. They lost the most people.
They lost like pretty much everyone because they were all above the 100th floor, I think, right?
Yeah, he was on the 100. I don't know if it was only 105 or maybe 106 too, but they were all on the top floor or one of the top floors.
Yeah, that's still surreal. I mean, the whole day is obviously surreal, but that one, I remember all the images. I was a really little kid, but like Howard Lutnick coming on TV, like his brother died. He's like, my whole company is just gone overnight. All these families left behind. I can't even. It's still hard to process that from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, that's one of the things, like my grief process, if you will, it's evolved as I got older. Like I was 12 years old. There's a lot of things I remember, but depending on what you ask me, there's a lot of that I don't remember. I remember that day very specifically, and we can get into that if you're interested, but
I would like to, yeah.
I can start there.
Let's do that.
So yeah, it was obviously Tuesday. I was in 7th grade, so 12 years old. I remember going to first period, and my buddy Jeff, who was notoriously late.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
So I think first period might've been a little after 9. First plane hit at 8:46, I believe. He rolls into first class. He goes, "Yo, Dave, doesn't your dad work in the World Trade Center?" And I said, "Yes, why?" And he goes, "A plane flew into the building." And back to what you're saying, surreal. It was like, I don't know what the hell that meant. What do you mean a plane flew into the building? And I don't remember what he told me. I don't know if he gave me more details, but I believe I went straight to the office. I excused myself, went to the office to try to make a phone call to call my mom and yada, yada. And they wouldn't let me.
They wouldn't let you?
They wouldn't let me, but now I understand why. I mean, because where I was raised in Middletown, New Jersey, a big commuter town. So everyone worked in the city. Yep. I think we lost 30 something people in that town alone. So a lot was happening. So a lot of other kids were getting called out of school that day. And I'm assuming I wasn't the only one that tried making a phone call that day. So they probably had to kind of, all right, they want me to make a call, but they just can't let everyone just get to the phone at that time. I'm sure I wasn't the only one. So regardless of what their reasoning was, couldn't get a phone call out. And my mom made the decision to leave me in school the whole day. And another one that I back, talkers in the comments, like, how could you leave your child in school all day? Well, she had no idea what was going on. What is she going to pull me into the home with the building still burning, not sure what was going on?
Right.
So she just let me go through the day while she was trying to figure out her own and what the heck was going on. And so the reason I point that out is it was just bizarre because I went the whole school day not knowing what was going on. I knew something happened. Kids were getting called down randomly, not imagining that how it resulted was going to happen because it was just so unfathomable. And so I remember getting made fun of by some of my friends, as 12-year-old boys do. And eventually when the school day ended, my best friend James at the time got suspended from the school bus the year before. So he happened to be walking home with me until his mom picked him up, which was a blessing to have him by my side. And I remember trying to go back to that day. I asked him, like, do you remember what we talked about? He said, honestly, we were just quiet. We didn't really say much, but I do remember walking around the bend. There was the last bend before you can see my house. And when I first saw my home for the first time, I saw cars outside. And that was the first moment when I was like, oh, like something went down. Like there's a Tuesday in the afternoon. Why are there 10 cars in my cul-de-sac? We get to the house. My mom, someone separated me and James. And I do remember someone trying to keep me away from the TV, but I forced myself to get to the TV. I wanted to see what happened. And I remember looking at my cousin's eyes. I still see his eyes. He was just looking at me. Now going back and forth as some of my story continues on, I just saw this look as if he knew my life was about to just, let alone everyone's, my life was just about to like flip upside down. So I walk into the living room, and that's when I look at the TV for the first time, and I saw the footage, and it was a replay. And that's the weird part about going back and forth with the story of where I am today and that day, because it was all done. Like while I was going through the school day and wondering what happened, let alone is my dad okay, it was all, the buildings were collapsing. It was all
you
finished.
didn't know that in school.
I didn't know that till, no one told me anything. So it was until, like I knew something was going on, obviously, but it wasn't until 3 o'clock whenever I got home that I saw the footage for the first time. And it was just a replay. It was all done. Debris was settled. Building was collapsed. Wow. My dad was essentially gone. So I remember seeing it for the first time. I don't know if it was the plane or the building collapsing, burst into tears. And then it was like the end of the movie there. It was like everything went black. And I think that was just my body just saying, yo, you can't handle this. We're going to shut you down for a little bit, and you got to figure this out later in your life to where I'm at now. But obviously I remember things throughout from storytelling and pieces of what that week and the following weeks were. But again, it was as if my body just said, yo, chill out. This is too much, system overload. We're going to black you out. And that's exactly what happened.
So you didn't, right when you saw that, because I mean, there was no precedent for this kind of thing in any facet or form. Like obviously it looked horrible and people assumed the worst when it came down. But the second you saw that replay, you thought to yourself, he's gone.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's tough for me to put myself in that exact position besides what I just told you. But yeah, I mean, it was so horrific. I mean, I saw it was an explosion. So even at 12 years old, like, this is not good. It was just the most horrific thing that a lot of people have ever seen, let alone a 12-year-old boy. And again, I'm aware there's 3,000 other people. So that was another unique part that we can get into of an individual experience that was part of the that's like a weird jumbled experience. But in that moment, obviously I'm only thinking about my dad. And it was just, I think in subconscious or conscious that I knew that was it. Like I've asked my mom, when did you realize when I had her on the show? I was like, when did you guys think that he wasn't coming home? And my mom, she knew. I think it was just, we haven't heard from him, but we had some hope because my sisters were telling me that people that we knew were coming home a little later in the day. So that we had our fingers crossed a little bit. But again, knowing the objective truth of him being on the 105th floor, like, and the plane hit under him, we knew that much. It was just like, we hoped, but we kind of just like, there's no, how could he have gotten out of that? And he didn't. So it was just a weird day of hanging on to hope, not sure what to do. The next day, I remember the news crew came to the town and my sister has this very difficult clip of her crying into the camera, begging for my dad to come home. So at that point, if it was a day later, we're still hanging on to hope, but I really feel like we all knew deep down that he wasn't coming back.
How many siblings do you have again? 2
older sisters.
So how old were your sisters at the time?
My oldest, Jacqueline, was about 8. Yeah, she should have been 18 or 19, sorry. And then Gina was just turning 18. So Gina was like her first week of school in college up north. Right. Jacqueline was home. And so my sister Jacqueline was the first one that was home. And then she was waiting for all of us to come home. And it was just my mom. My mom was like 44 and my dad was 46.
That is one of those days. It's one of the first like vivid memory days that I have. And my family knew a couple people in those towers, but I didn't lose family members in those towers. I didn't lose close friends in those towers. I didn't go to school with close friends because I was from South Jersey who lost people in those towers. Like it was more distant, even though it was right here. I will say, I do remember though every aspect of that day. And one of the things that really stood out was the fact that there were teachers in the hallway. And I'm not 1 or 2. It was like 5 or 6 across, say, grades probably like kindergarten through 5th grade, something like that. And there were probably 3 classes per. So you do the math. It was almost like a third of teachers who had close family who lived right there in Manhattan. A couple of them, I think I had people who worked in the building. And I remember, 9:30 in the morning, maybe 10 a.m. in the morning after the towers collapsed at 10:30, we would see them out in the hallways on their phones calling families. And our teachers took us all into our rooms and described exactly what was happening while it was happening. And I was 7 or 8 years old.
I was going to ask, you're 8 years old.
Right? So that's like kind of young to be getting told something like that, but they told us exactly what it was. And I believe, this part's a little hazy, but I think when we sat down to really learn what it all was, it was probably around 10:30 or 11. So the towers were down at that point. And I remember them explaining like they fell. We don't know what went on. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.